Discover the advantage of unlimited access to all the stories and resources from IBJ and inside Indiana business. From insights to inspiration, business leaders rely on the IBJ for all things Indiana business. Start your $1 a week trial now at ibj.com/trial offer.
Do you want to mix moments of inspiration with time to network? IBJ Media Events has you covered. From industry deep dives to awards celebrations honoring Indiana's top leaders, see what's coming up and reserve your seat now at ibj.com/register. This show is brought to you by Prolific, the growth firm. When growth stalls, CEOs turn to Prolific to plan, execute, and achieve what's next. Hi, I'm Dave Neff, host of Talent Scout. On this show, we shine a light on Indiana's next generation of leaders who are making a difference in business, community, and civic life. These are real conversations about purpose, mentorship, and building a future that matters. Join me as we invest in leadership that lasts.
Welcome to a special conversation with Dave Neff, the newest host joining the IBJ Media Podcast Network, home to 11 shows exploring leadership, our community, and business and culture here in Indiana. I'm Nate Feltman, CEO of IBJ Media. Today, we are excited to welcome Dave Neff as the host of Talent Scout, a podcast dedicated to identifying and amplifying Indiana's next generation of leaders. Through candid conversations and meaningful storytelling, Talent Scout will explore how mentorship, networking, and civic engagement are shaping the future of our state. Dave is the president and CEO of Boilermaker Alliance. He happens to also be a great friend. That Boilermaker Alliance is Purdue University's NIL collective that empowers student athletes to become champions in their sports and their communities. With a career spanning sports, tech, philanthropy, Dave has had leadership roles at many well-known companies here in Indiana, including Pacer Sports Entertainment, Exact Target, Edge Mentoring, and Prolific. He's also a passionate advocate for educational opportunities where he serves as board chair of Providence Cristo Rey High School. Dave is a recipient of the 2022 John Lechleiter Award, a 2016 40 Under 40 winner, and a 2024 Indiana 250 Most Influential Business Person last year. He's known, as I know from being a good friend, he's known for building intentional relationships that drive strategic growth and social impact. He lives in Indianapolis with his wife and 4 children, so he's a busy guy and brings resilience, empathy, and vision to all of his work. So, Dave, can't tell you how excited we are that you're launching a podcast with IBJ Media, and especially that you're going to do something that we all want to do here, which is highlight the next generation of leaders who are going to shape the future of our community, our businesses, and civic life. So glad you're doing this.
Well, it's an honor, Nate. And I remember graduating college and first job at the Pacers, learning about the IBJ and seeing that 40 Under 40 list, saying, I want to make that one day, at 22 years old. So now to be sitting here and launching a podcast with IBJ Media, I couldn't be more excited.
Well, I'm thrilled about it, and we've been talking about getting you engaged here for a long time, and so this is a great way to do so. But you're a really, really busy guy. As I mentioned, you've got a big family, and you're leading an important entity for Purdue. What inspired you at this point in time to take the time to do this, to reach the audiences that we want to reach, young people who are going to be our next generation leaders? What inspired you to start Talent Scout?
Yeah. Well, probably going back 7 or 8 years, Nate, when I was leading Edge Mentoring, I had a number of people be like, you should start a podcast, right, around mentorship, around all these different things. And my excuse was always, I'd love to interview guests and, basically do all the fun stuff, which is getting them to come and talk to them. But I didn't want to do all the back end editing and producing and all of that. And I think this is going to be the best of both worlds because I don't have to worry about that. You've got a great team here that'll handle all the back office stuff. And I just really am excited about trying to bring a spotlight to leaders that may or may not be on some of your listeners and readers' radars from across the state.
Yeah, we're lucky that one of the guys you're talking about here at IBJ Media is Chris Spangle, who just had a baby and is still willing to come in and help us film this. So we do have a great team, and Chris is leading that team on the podcast front. So you just mentioned kind of spotlighting up-and-coming leaders. Why do you think it is important for our community to put a spotlight on some of these folks who are going to be, at some point in their careers, going to be leading the things that we all care about here in the state?
Yeah.
Well, as the name suggests, Talent Scout, it is intentional. And I think, there's so many great people, 40, early 40s and under that are doing important work across our state from all different backgrounds. And while my background is primarily business and nonprofit philanthropy, whether it's folks in education, folks in government, folks in, law, I just think I'm excited to kind of bring some visibility and platform folks that are doing not just important work in their day job, but in the community. And me, I'm passionate about getting beyond sort of the four walls of my day job and really giving back, whether that's Providence Cristo Rey, whether that's Ascension St. Vincent Foundation. So I think hopefully we could tell some stories and your viewers can learn a little bit about people that may not have been on their radar that will be for years to come.
And I think also one of the things that we hope it's going to do is inspire those to want to be leaders, to want to do some of the things you talked about, giving back to the community in different ways, saying yes when called upon, out there networking and building what I described as very intentional relationships. So not only do we want to spotlight these folks, but we want to inspire others to step in, right? Absolutely.
I recall the late, great Jim Morris. I got to know him when I was working at the Pacers, and certainly a mentor and influence in my life, saying, in the 70s, Dave, Indianapolis was a tier 4 city, and there was a group of us that wanted to make it a tier 1 city. And so they've given us that, right? I mean, we've got a lot of great things going in central Indiana. We've got our challenges, but that's not guaranteed to just perpetuate itself, right? We need others to step up like you and so many others are doing to kind of carry that mantle and push central Indiana and the state forward.
One of the things that you've done that I didn't mention that I think goes hand in hand with this podcast and the focus of this podcast is you started something. When you said Jim Morris, it reminded me, of course, he had the duck lunch, but you started something a number of years ago. You'll remind us like how many years ago it was, called the Egg Breakfast.
Yeah.
And, but it really was. And you invited some old guys like me and a couple others that, and to participate. But that really started to bring together a group of young people who are doing really good things in this community, and in many cases didn't know each other and got to know each other, and it was a very diverse group as well. So, talk a little bit about what inspired you to do that, and maybe how this goes hand in hand with what we're going to do on the podcast.
Yeah, the Egg Breakfast is a pretty simple concept. I haven't talked a lot about it publicly, but a good friend of mine, Seth Morales, and I put our heads together 7-8 years ago now, and just said, there's all these great groups. You got Penrod, you got YPO, sort of these different networks that exist for different reasons. But where was sort of the melting pot that brought all these worlds together for kind of the under 45, under 50 crowd? Business, government, education, philanthropy. And so we just simply said, hey, let's host a breakfast and invite some of our friends, and let's be intentional to make sure it's diverse and represented well. And we've done that each year for the last, I think, 6 or 7 years. And, it's not really baked that far in advance. We try to think of a different venue or a different home to do it in, but it's grown to where we have, 150 folks coming every year. And I think part of it is we're not trying to engineer an outcome, but to build relationships before you might need them or have a use for them, to say, okay, now this is a dense network that can really be activated.
Yeah. And this just goes hand in hand, the podcast, with telling some of those stories and introducing people that may not be well known yet to some of our community leaders, but will help identify those folks who are stepping up and that want to be even in more leadership roles. So
Absolutely.
That's exciting. So you've talked about talked about intergenerational mentorship and building bridges as part of who you are between industry, age groups, and communities. Who are some of the mentors that helped you get to where you are today and helped you be successful and be in leadership positions?
I think there's different mentors as I'm learning for different seasons of your life, but 3 that come to mind in my 20s that were all extremely impactful for different reasons would be Jim Morris, who I already mentioned, Tim Kopp, and Jeff Simmons. Jim Morris goes without saying, right? Sort of a city father. We started at the Pacers the same year, 2007, and just seeing kind of how he built relationships over his entire career in life, and how he just sought to help as many people as he could, how he sought to bring people together from diverse backgrounds.
I tried to tell him as many times as I could how much that inspired me to go about doing things like the egg breakfast and building relationships. But, those 4 years at the Pacers, and we stayed in touch after I left, were incredibly impactful in terms of how I kind of viewed my career. Tim Kopp, former chief marketing officer at ExactTarget, which is where I went after the Pacers, another guy that just took an interest in me and really poured into me early in my career. And Jeff Simmons, the CEO of Elanco, who really asked me to come lead Edge. I'd been in this mentoring group that he had started back in 2008, 2009, and I learned a ton from him around leadership and public speaking, how to manage a scorecard. He just is a guy that obviously has been in Elanco for his entire career, and Elanco's moving downtown to the GM stamping plant later this year. And so those three, all in different ways, shaped my 20s, which has now led to where I am today.
Yeah, it's awesome. So in terms of like who we can expect to hear from on the podcast, who you plan to invite to participate, are there 2 or 3 people that you can mention and kind of what you think the focus might be?
Yeah, I've given this a lot of thought, and I probably don't want to give away too many secrets yet, but I think about folks like my good friend Fred Yakey, who I met through Providence Cristo Rey High School, and Fred's now a real estate developer, and he's got something called the Male Mentoring Barbershop Initiative, and some of your viewers may know him, but Fred and I are just kindred spirits. Met 6 years ago, and he asked me to get involved with Providence Cristo Rey, but telling his story to a broader audience. Others that might come to mind, some of the folks that I've met through my work alongside Purdue Athletics, potentially somebody like Brandon Lee, who's Indianapolis product, Lawrence Central High School, now the general manager of our football program up at Purdue, a guy that is a rising star in the space. I really want it to be not just Central Indiana, but folks from around the state, and hopefully we can host them right here in your studio.
Yeah. Well, Dave, I can't tell you how excited we are to begin this journey, this podcast with you that is focused on up and coming and already current leaders, and you personally being involved with you, given all your work in the community and your desire to see this community to grow and just continue to get better and better place for people to live and for us to attract and keep our college grads, and some of these stories that I know that you will tell with people like Fred and others, I know will help in that cause. And so IBJ Media couldn't be more excited to launch this new podcast, Talent Scout with Dave Neff, and can't wait for you to get going.
I'm excited. This is something I've been looking forward to. Now it's here, and so really excited to partner with you, Nate, and the rest of the team. Chris Spangle. It's gonna be a blast.
Awesome, Dave. Well, looking forward to it.
This episode is brought to you by Prolific, the growth firm, helping visionary leaders accelerate growth. This fall, we're bringing that mission to life with the Prolific Growth Summit, an exclusive one-day experience at Rally on September 24th in Indianapolis. Hear from world-class voices like Patrick Lencioni, Hobby Lobby founder David Green, Goldman Sachs Heidi Cruz, and NBA player and entrepreneur Jonathan Isaac. Join top CEOs and executives right here in our city. Learn more at prolificgrowthsummit.com.
Indiana's biggest names, their most personal stories. The Business and Beyond podcast brings you one-on-one conversations with the state's top leaders in business, sports, politics, and culture. If you want to know what makes Indiana tick, this is your show. Subscribe and listen wherever you get your podcasts or at ibjpodcasts.com.
On the go? So are we. Get the IBJ Media app, your all-in-one news source for Indiana business news. Get breaking news alerts, read every story from IBJ, Inside Indiana Business, and the Indiana Lawyer, and listen to your favorite podcasts all in one place. Big news, small screen. Search IBJ Media and download the app today.